Brilliance Audio presents Girl Sleuth, Nancy Drew and the Women Who Created Her by Melanie Rehak, performed by the author.
Grab your magnifying glass, because this is a mystery story. At first glance, its star is a girl detective, a legendary foiler of plots and teen avatar of justice. But really, the mystery lies beyond the realm of her adventures. It's in the story of how she came to be an American icon and why she stayed one for decades. It's in the lives of the man who dreamed her up and the women who shepherded her into existence and molded her character. Most of all, it's in the long-buried secret behind the identity of Carolyn Keene, the woman who has kept generations of little girls sneaking a flashlight under the covers after bedtime to finish reading just one more chapter of a Nancy Drew mystery story. For some of us who had our flashlights summarily removed by mothers and fathers in the know, more creative methods were required. At the age of about 10, I used to pretend I was afraid of the dark so that my parents would leave the light on in the hallway outside my bedroom. Then I would flip around in my bed and hang over the bottom edge. Straining to hold my book at such an angle that it would catch the sliver of light from the doorway, I would keep going until the lines literally blurred in front of my eyes. My favorite title, which I must have read and reread dozens of times between the ages of 8 and 12, was The Mystery of the Tolling Bell. As always, it featured Nancy, 18 and attractive, unusually sensible, clever, and talented, with her trademark red-gold hair, which often blew in the wind to appealing effect. Tomboy George, athletic-looking with short dark hair, and George's cousin Bess, giggly and slightly plump as she was in every book. The story concerned a cliffside sea cavern haunted by a ghost who was said to ring a warning bell just before the tide rushed in and turned the rocky chamber into a watery grave for anyone caught there. It was crammed with Nancy's do-gooder sense of responsibility, loads of French phrases, primarily concerning a subplot involving a phony cosmetics company called Moncourt, that Nancy had no trouble translating for her pals, and fascinating information on the history and making of bells. There were also the usual twists and turns, painted with none too subtle strokes. Nancy was knocked unconscious, a feature of many books in the series, and there were secret passageways and an evil man named Grumper. At one point, Nancy and George tie up a thief and sit on his chest to make sure he doesn't escape. The teen sleuth, as always, figures it all out in the end, including how the mysterious bell is being rung by the ocean tides and who's behind the phony cosmetics. She pronounces her solution in a speech studded with exclamation points. "Just as I thought," Nancy told herself as she hugged the damp wall to keep from being seen. "This is the interior of the Tolling Bell Cave, and the ghost can only be one person, Grumper." As was often the case, this revelation was not sufficient to put Nancy out of danger. Instead, it led immediately to her near death in the spooky cave. She was saved in part by her boyfriend Ned Nickerson, but she was careful not to rely on him too much. The book's final exchange was a masterful display of the coy deferral that was Nancy's trademark when it came to Ned, which I loved as much as the craggy cave scenes and the road trips in the famous blue car. "Mysteries," Ned exclaimed, turning out the lantern. "Haven't you had enough of them?" Nancy was sure she never would have. Soon, an intriguing invitation would involve her in another baffling mystery, the clue in the old album. "Anyway," said Ned, "there's one puzzle I wish you would solve for me." "What's that?" "Why you always change the subject when I try to talk to you about something that isn't a bit mysterious." Nancy smiled and said, "Ned, someday I promise to listen."
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.